Hi, I'm Peggy Robinson, and I decided to make this film, Memories of Dying, to help near-death experiencers tell their story. I know some people have never heard of near-death experiences, and some have, but there's more to them than meets the eye. I'm sitting here in my property in Ohio, in the creek, where we had a miracle. I was 2 months pregnant for twins. I was 25. And all of a sudden, we heard our little boy yell, "Mom, Jeremy." And we didn't know what happened to Jeremy. The little baby was only 4 or 5 years old. And we came running down. And my husband did. He came running down, but I was frozen in fear. My little baby was drowning in this creek. I left my body as I was praying to, "Dear God, please save my baby." I was in the air, and suddenly I had the knowledge of what happened. He had fell in the creek, and he was drowning. But I told Jeremy in my prayer, because suddenly we were connected, I said, "Jeremy, put your feet down, stand up. Calm down, it's not that deep. Walk out of there." And that's exactly what he did. And 20 years later, my son told me, "Mom, I heard you praying." And that's exactly what it was. I was trying to swim because I panicked, and it wasn't that deep. I heard you tell me, "Jeremy, it's not that deep. Walk out of there." But what was I supposed to do with that miracle? Well, I hope I can do something with it today by filming the first episode that I am going to make called Memories of Dying. They're not really near-death experiences. They are experiences from the other side. These communications we have while we are on the other side are amazing. They are otherworldly. Mine is available if you want to hear it. It's on YouTube, Pegi Robinson's NDEs Part 1 and 2. But I just wanted to make this first episode down here in this creek where a miracle happened many years ago. It was 1986. A week later, I lost my twins and had an NDE. Back then, I never heard of an NDE. I was sure I was the only one that this ever happened to. I had no one to talk to. And as extraordinary as it was, I had to put it away and keep it inside. Well, I don't do that anymore. I got my courage, I found my truth, and I stand up and tell you, this is happening all over the world and has been happening since the days of the Bible. Churches won't let us talk about it because they don't believe us. They think we're false prophets. The only place we've had to talk about our near-death experiences, our memories of dying, is in a supernatural type of platforms. You know, they mix these glorious experiences, these memories we had of the other side, these miracles. They mix it in with palm reading, witchcraft, voodoo, I don't know. But that's not where they belong. And I am going to make this film, and I'm going to continue to make these films of near-death experiencers telling their stories, and hopefully give them the platform they deserve. You will hear near-death experiencers of all walks of life, all types of personalities and backgrounds, tell about the other side, and they are so similar. And I don't ask you to judge the people. I ask you to listen to what the other side told them to come back and tell you. One day Jesus will come again. And I believe that all of us near-death experiencers have these memories of dying for you. Because that's what we're told. To go back and teach about Him. To teach that He loves every one of us the same. And with all the hate and the struggle that is just beginning. I'm sure it's going to get a lot worse. We need to hear these messages now more than ever, and they need to be given the respect that they deserve. Not the NDEers. We are unworthy of these miracles. But for whatever reason, we are the ones that were chosen to come back. 10 to 15% of the population of the world, that's millions of people that have had these memories, that are walking around with these memories and don't have the right place to tell them. So I'm telling mine in this creek where the miracle happened, that began to open my eyes, that these are real, and how important and glorious, what a gift they are. We all have guardian angels, and they come to us from the other side, and we can listen to the other side when we learn how to, and we can begin to do that by listening to the memories of dying very carefully, to the messages they're bringing. There's more to these than meets the eye. Thank you for watching.
Before my near-death experience, I'd lived a pretty adventurous life. I'd traveled all over the world, hit all 7 continents, field-produced the Titanic expedition for Discovery.com, went to the North Pole for Microsoft, and I also went to Mount Everest a few times, both for the King of Malaysia and for the Yale University School of Medicine. My original background was in wildlife filmmaking, and I lived in Namibia, Southwest Africa, off and on for 14 years, making films for both European television and American television. My wife said, now that you're not traveling so much, why don't you build these old airplanes you're always talking about? And I thought about it, I said, yeah, I can do that now. I built a little 1933 reproduction flying flea. It was about the size of a soapbox derby car with a big motorcycle engine right in front of my face and a huge propeller. It was very whimsical looking, like out of a Disney cartoon. So I was flying that on its second test flight in October of 2016 when I lost my engine. I couldn't make it back to my airfield. It was rocky and hilly and forested all around us. So the only way I could get down was to aim for a small lake in a nearby Boy Scout camp. So that was rough to have that airplane crash. In terms of what caused the NDE, it wasn't the plane crash itself. I was aiming for this small lake. I overshot the bank, crashed headlong into all these big tree trunks at 70 miles an hour, again in the equivalent of a soapbox derby car. When the plane stopped crashing, there was absolutely no plane left around me. I had ruptured both lungs, broken all my ribs. My right leg had multiple fractures. There was a hole in my lower back from the engine battery breaking loose and hitting me, again as a 70-mile-an-hour projectile. Luckily, there was a man fishing nearby who enjoyed fishing in this Boy Scout camp that was closed at that time of year because it was peaceful and quiet. If he hadn't been there, I'm sure I would have died because I was up under the trees, so my friends who flew around looking for me couldn't see me. But he was able to keep me propped up while he called 911, and a medical helicopter was able to fly in 30, 45 minutes later, perhaps, and pull me out of the wreckage and fly me up to the Hartford Trauma Center. It was there that my wife showed up about 2 hours later and found me in a breathing machine. I had tubing coming in and going out of me every possible way you can imagine to keep me alive. I was also restrained, but I had escaped the restraints. So the surgeons told my wife, we should probably put him in a coma. We have many operations that will be day-long, at least a week's worth coming up. We could lose him at any time. Some of these have only 2% chance of success. So she readily agreed, let's just put him into a coma, and that way, he can rest and the doctors can do their work. It's my best estimation because obviously being in this much physical shock, painkillers, anesthesia, and so on, it's not like I was looking at a clock, but I would say that when they put me into the coma here, that's when I had my near-death experience. And in that the coma here was for 1 week, based on the work I was doing in my near-death experience, it's like I was doing it for that entire week. First, I want to say that my near-death experience is a little different from most of the others you'll hear about. There was no going through a tunnel or returning through a tunnel. There was no seeing loved ones. There was no life review, no big message, no boundary of no return, no seeing angelic beings. And yet it wasn't without purpose, and certainly it was a profound experience. So what happened was, it was as if I were teleported up to a terrace of a tall building, yet everything was gray like concrete. And as I sort of came to and realized I was there, I could see this purgatorial skyline in front of me, as if I was in a major city or a major metropolis, but many, many years after an asteroid strike or a nuclear blast or something. I mean, it was just total devastation. And there were these huge storm clouds above me as well that just looked like they were ready to deliver the mother of all storms. And I remember just looking around and seeing all of this and taking it in. I was very accepting of it. It's not like I was afraid or had any, negative feelings of any sort. And as I looked around, all of a sudden this wave of nausea hit me right in my gut, and it just moved through me. And I said out loud, or seemingly out loud, I don't think I can stand this. And the moment I said that, I heard this light sound off to my left, like a light clacking of gears. And I looked over and saw this large, maybe 4-story high, egg-shaped structure made out of lattice work. So it was like bands of material as gray as the world around me. And with that being lattice, there were these large openings I could look through. And I saw these little movements inside. So doubled over with pain, I walked over to this egg and I looked through the open lattice work, and I saw these little gears, like they were suspended in air, just idly moving through the air, some just passing through each other like they were ghosts or transparent. And I remember looking at them, and some were in focus and some were not so much in focus, but the representations they brought with them were very clear. And that was, when I looked at a gear, whether it was, again, definite and sharp, or whether it was almost transparent and more, like I said, ghost-like, it's as if a video feed played in my head of what they meant. And I realized these are events in my future, not my past, but my future. And I put my hand through the lattice work to just see, gosh, can I feel these? And at some point, one of the gears brushed by my hand. And when it did, I was immediately again hit with pain. And I just reflexively grabbed it, pulled it out through the lattice work, and threw it away over my shoulder. And it's at that point I said, I noticed that all the gears recalibrated, spun around to recalibrate for this one that was now missing. And that's when I said, what is this thing? And this disembodied voice answered, this is the process of becoming. And I said, what? And it said, you are in the in-between. And I said, in between what? And it said, everything. You're standing inside the eternity of a single moment. And I said, I don't understand. And it said, the past is dust. Can you remember the world to which your body belongs? And I said, no, I can't. And that's when it, really drove home the fact that I was standing in this moment that it called the impossible now, because it was impossibly thin, being a split moment in time, and yet it expands across universes. And I, asked, what are these gears? What do they represent? And it said, they represent future choices in your life. And I said, why do some cause me pain? And it said, all choices have unintended consequences, some unfortunate and some not. The pain each brings is your guide. And so I realized I was being given the opportunity to remove bad choices in my future, choices that would be to my spiritual detriment were I make them. And I also realized that in kind of reaching through this egg and fishing around for these gears, that a lot of the ones I was reaching for were high up, like I couldn't quite see them. And I think that represented they were in the future. Maybe the ones that were more eye level were in the present. And I realized, because of the way that was working out, I really couldn't see these choices. There were only two there that I was able to see, and they were pleasant, so I left them. And when I say pleasant, like seeing grandchildren or something like that. But the ones that caused me pain, I don't know what they were. And I'm sure it's because some of them would have been beyond, my ability to resist the temptation. For example, what if one of them was, you're going to win the lottery one day and be incredibly wealthy, but you're going to become a real jerk as a result? Well, you can imagine most of us would try to argue with God, please let us stay, let's keep that one. We'll promise to be good and do good things with it. But why make it a conversation? It's not like I had all the time in the world there. It was just going to be a mission, and let's get the mission done. So by using the pain that these bad choices would create, both in others and in myself, just use that as a guide. So that was my moral compass. It wasn't a scripture, a mantra, an ideologue or anything like that. It was just straight out pain. So I just kept fishing around inside until I found something that caused me pain, and I removed it. And every time I removed it, all the gears had to reset themselves. My destiny had to reset itself to a future that wasn't meant to be. And at one point I even asked, where are the gears that feel good? And the voice of the in-between clearly said, you're not here to feel good. And it wasn't a threat. It wasn't threatening. I didn't feel threatened. I just felt like, we're here to work. We're here to get this done. And, it said a few more things. I said, I don't even know where or when these futures happen. And it said, where and when are not important. What's important is that you see the beauty of how things fit and refit together. And I think that's toward building faith that, there is a plan. Everything has a place in that plan. And, it's pretty rock solid. God doesn't take any chances. It's all as it should be. I think also the lesson was that, maybe some of the major milestones in our lives are really pretty definite, but how we get there, the circuitous route we take, one choice or another, we're still going to get where we need to go. It just may be that some roads take longer than others based on those choices. And I remember I said that I feel ashamed that I'm not using some moral compass, one better than pain, to guide my decisions. And it said, literally one of the most profound things I think anyone has ever said to me. It said, if those who have choices make poor use of them, then offering fewer possibilities could be called mercy. And that's true, isn't it? And at one point it said, pay more attention to your relationships, and everything is interconnected. And I said, I think I can live with this now, because I was becoming less nauseous with the removal of these bad choices. And it even said at one point, just because you don't make bad choices doesn't mean you won't make wrong ones. We still make mistakes, but it's all about our intention. And in the East, I believe, they say, intention is as much what causes karma as the action itself. So that's something important to remember. And with that, it wasn't like I came back through a tunnel. It's like I just saw the scene either kind of zoom out or fade. And that was telling me, okay, it's done with me and it's time to go back. I do remember that sort of moving back. And that was it. I would say that when I came back, it was probably another week before I actually had any real memory. According to people who said I was not making much sense at all about anything. Coming back from, again, all the anesthesia, the physical shock, the painkillers, I would say, again, it was about a full week. So I find it very interesting that with two bookends of total amnesia, if you will, within those two bookends is this incredible experience where I was fully cognizant, had full memory, and such deep purpose that continues to unfold every day, basically 3.5 years later. The first thing I really noticed was how detached I was. I could sit there and just stare at a wall for 6 hours, no problem. And also I really felt like I was still in the in-between, looking at life here through it. And I remember saying one time, the in-between isn't a place you go to or come from, it's a place you are. And I did notice one thing. A lot of people who have near-death experiences, if they weren't psychic, they are now. If they were psychic, they're more so now. I won't say I have any psychic abilities, but the one attribute that really got amped up was empathy. And I saw this happen even in the hospital. People were exceedingly kind to me. Nurses remarked on how I had 3 to 5 doctors come in to check on me, whereas everyone else just gets one. And my doctors would stay for an hour, where everybody's stays about 15 minutes. And one wanted me to go in business with him, had me on international conference calls with my leg in this cage up in the air. It was really like a scene out of a movie or something. And then upon coming home, that expansion of connecting with people through this magical aura, if you will, of empathy just seemed to continue, and it continues to this day. When I'm able to present my experience before a body of people, whether it's a IANS conference or a local meeting of some sort, sometimes I can feel it filling the room. And I won't say anything, but afterwards people will come and say they really felt something fill the room. So my belief is that the more of me that gets out of the way and just opens a channel for that to come through, the better it is. And who knows, maybe someone is healed, or maybe someone feels validated or happier as a result. I just figure that whatever happens, the in-between knows. If this person needs this person needs that, it's fine. One of the things I realized too is that here we see life through the filters we want. There we see life through the filters we need. And sometimes what we need is a real hard look in a mirror of truth without the benefit of ego filters to see ourselves as we truly are. So even though you may come back more magical or more empowered in some way or another, it's also an incredibly humbling experience. I'll close with this. One question someone asked me one time, which was great, was, did I have a bad premonition on the day I flew? And I thought about it, and I knew my near-death experience was wanting me to answer in a way that was different than the way I would have answered before. And I said, forget a premonition. Imagine I had full knowledge of exactly what was going to happen. Would I have had the guts to get into the cockpit anyway? Because if God wants to take you over to the other side for a little one-on-one time, a little tune-up, what price is too great to pay? And if God's doing the asking, do you think you're going to get out of it? I doubt it. So this is part of how we lose the fear of death. We may not be keen on the ways to get there, but having been through it once, it's okay. And there's an old Zen koan that says, if you're afraid to die, then die now. For having died once, you'll never have to die again.
Well, with the drowning, since I was only 13, I had no idea what was actually happening at the time. But except for all the stuff that was going on around the pool, that I could see under 10 feet of water. And then there was this brilliant light. At first I thought it was a light bulb in the pool, but it was a beautiful, warm, loving light, and it was so bright. It was just a white light, and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I could felt warm and cozy, and I wasn't afraid. I didn't have any pain. And I didn't know whether that light was coming to me or I was going to it. I just know that it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I had no pain, no fear, nothing. I felt so comfortable and so protected and loved. But I could see all the way around the pool what was happening. I could see the look on my mother's face. She was up in the balcony across, on the opposite end of the pool where the adults were sitting. And I could see her leaning over the banister, and it looked like she was right over top of me. I could see the lady, the younger lifeguard that had the little teeny kids, and they were in like the 3-foot section of the pool. I saw that. I was laying at the bottom of the pool, and I was focusing on that light. And just as that light was getting ready to touch me, I heard what sounded like a metal door slam, and it echoed. And it wasn't until I was being brought out of the water that I realized what that was. And that was my soul was going back into my body. But I didn't know that at the time, when I heard that metal door slam, that's when the lifeguard had jumped in and was pulling me out of the water and doing CPR on me. Then the next thing I know, I'm feeling all this horrific pain, and I'm coughing and choking and all this throwing up water. And during the experience itself, I didn't feel any pain. I wasn't afraid. And all I saw was that beautiful light. I was confused. I didn't know what had happened to me. And after the experience, I never went back to the swimming lessons again. And my mom never talked to me about it. I think it was because she was so afraid. And I didn't know what the experience was at such a young age. I had no idea what had happened to me. Then the phone went flying across the yard. I screamed. I felt this horrific, searing, burning pain in my arm. And then my spirit just lifted up out of me like peeling a banana. The pain was gone instantly. I went into my house. And I started walking around my house, and I saw, the first thing I noticed was everything had a burnt gold look to it. And I was standing in my kitchen, which is right where the back door was, and then the concrete stairs. So I had just walked in the door, and I looked at the curtains on the window where the sink was, and I noticed that they were not my curtains. So then I walked into the dining room, and I noticed that the furniture was not my furniture. And then I went into the living room, and that stuff wasn't my stuff either. And that's when I heard that old radio program playing. It sounded like back in the days of the Waltons, and I couldn't find the radio. I tried, but there was... I couldn't find it. And I couldn't find my family that was in the house. Well, at that point, I started to get really scared. I didn't know what had happened. I mean, I knew I was struck by lightning, but it didn't dawn on me that I was dead. And I couldn't understand why. This was my house. I knew how to get around in it. I knew all the rooms, but none of the stuff in it was mine. And I did get scared, and I started to panic. And just when I started to panic, that's when that huge, loving, formless presence appeared. And I wasn't afraid anymore at that point. All I did was feel this love that was just so huge that just filled me, and I was at peace. And then that loving presence took me from my living room through these beautiful pink and gold clouds. But what was interesting about that was that I went sideways. I didn't go up and I didn't go down. We went lateral. They were so beautiful. I've never seen anything like it. They were pink, and there were gold, like outlined the pink with this beautiful liquid gold color. And we went really fast, moved at great speed through those pink and gold clouds. And then I was in a garden and I met my two brothers, and they were the ones that actually told me I had died. And I thought, well, this is cool. I can handle this. And that's when I looked down the front of me to see if I still had a body, because they had bodies, and they were just, they were gorgeous. And I looked down the front of me and I could see my hair down the front of me. I could see my, clothes. I could see my legs. I could see my feet. And I did have a body. But what was interesting about this body, I call it a light body because it wasn't heavy or weighted down with gravity. It was like I was as light as a feather. And I was illuminated, just like my brothers were. And there was a whole group of people that gathered around me because I was getting ready to have a life review. And so a lot of people started gathering around, and they were just there for love and support. Nobody that I saw was over the age of late 20s, early 30s. And they were from all different time periods. I saw women in beautiful gowns. I saw men in suits. I saw people dressed in regular clothes, just like what we wear now. But they were, what I didn't know, I knew them and they knew me, but I didn't know where I knew them from. And everybody was just, I felt such love and such acceptance. And living in this world, I never felt accepted. I never felt like I belonged here or anything like that. So when I was there, it was like, I wasn't worried about whether my hair was perfect or my makeup was perfect or, because I felt like I fit in and I was loved and accepted for me. And that was, for me, that was huge. After I had my life review, my brothers were walking me around in the garden, and I was seeing all of the beautiful things that was there. And then Jesus came out of this grove of trees, and he walked up to me and he told me that he loved me and that he always had and always will, and not to be afraid. And that was my first clue that I was coming back, but it went over my head. I had no idea that that's what was going to happen. And I know that if he had, he is the creator of all things, so he can appear as anything he wants to. But if he had appeared to me as a burning bush or a goat with three heads, I would have took off running the other way and we wouldn't have had a conversation. So he appeared to me in a way that was comforting to me. Yeah, that people are more concerned with what he looks like than the love that he gives you. I call it the wow factor. I was just so blown away by everything, all of the beauty and the love and the intricate details of everything that I saw. And I think the whole reason that he brought me there was to teach me that he doesn't make mistakes and that I wasn't all of those things that people had been telling me my whole adult life.
Back in October 2014, there was a stomach virus going around. I was really sick, and I never went to the doctor, the hospital. I thought it was stomach virus, and kept getting worse. And stand up, couldn't walk, couldn't hardly move. I called an ambulance. They were 30 minutes out on another call, so I drove down to the local hospital, and they did a CAT scan, and the doctor come back a few minutes later and told me they had to get me out of the hospital and into a bigger hospital because my appendix was about to rupture. They sent me down to Kevin Clark Medical Center. Okay. And the emergency room doctor there, he came in and looked at my x-rays, and he got on the phone and told whoever he called, he said, I need an emergency room now before this man dies. And that's as much as I can remember, because right then I guess that's when they stuck me with a bunch of needles and knocked me out. Next morning when I woke up in my room, I had thought I had just had a dream. And I remember thinking about the dream, and then the doctor come in, and he looked at me, he said, "You're very lucky to be alive." I go, "What do you mean?" He said, "You died twice on the operating table last night." He said, "You shouldn't even be here." And he said, first off, he said, when we opened you up, they had to cut my stomach open. He said, we had to drain 18 cc's of infection off of your stomach. He said, and then your appendix were not where they were supposed to be. So apparently God put me together wrong for a joke. And he said, once they finally found my appendix, they had already ruptured. And what I thought was a dream ended up being a near-death experience. My daughter was born 7/9/87, and she was born with a rare brain disease called Dandy Walker syndrome, and the doctors told her she would live about 2 weeks. And she lived to be 18 years old when she died. And she had numerous brain operations, surgeries. She was in the hospital over 100 times. She never walked, talked, sat up. Fed by a G-tube, on oxygen, breathing machines all her life. And the night that I died, I didn't see no tunnel with the bright light or anything. It's like I just woke up and I was in this place. I saw angels in white boats and a beautiful, brilliant, bright light, and you just feel the love and everything just coming through. There was no hate, there was no sadness or anything, just the love coming from the light. And I looked around, and I could see all these angels around. I could see beautiful green grass. There was a huge pond or lake with crystal clear water in it. The stars and everything shining. And the people you know here, you're going to know them in heaven. They look the same. They don't get old. My daughter came up to me, and she looked at me, she waved and she smiled, and she said, "Daddy, I love you and I miss you." And I told her, I said, "I love you and I miss you too, Sasha." When she was on earth, she could never talk. That's the first time I ever heard her say anything. And she went on jumping and playing. And she was doing cartwheels and everything, just having a good time. And I stood there for a few minutes, and then my dad, who died in February 9, 2006, and that was exactly 2 months before my daughter, who died April 10, 2006 at 18. My dad was 78. And he got up one morning and told my mom, he said, "I'm having bad chest pains." And she asked him, said, "Do you want to go to the hospital?" And he said, "No, I'm going to go watch TV." And he said, "If I'm going to die, I'm going to die here at home in the recliner." And he went in, turned the TV on, and my dad, having a heart attack, lights up a cigarette. About 2 minutes later, my mom said she walked in there, sat beside him, and he looked up at her and he said, "I love you." And she goes, "I love you too." And he passed away. And so, yeah, I saw him. He come up, and he had the same. The angels are different than we are. My dad and my daughter, they had the same clothes on that they was buried in. And my dad, people are going to think this is dumb, but yet my dad was actually smoking a pipe when I saw him. He always smoked the pipe before he died, or a cigarette, and he had a pipe at the time. And he looked exactly the same, the gray hair, gray beard, wire-rimmed glasses. And he stood there and he looked at me and he said, "I love you and miss you, son." And I said, "I love you and miss you too, Dad." And I looked at him, I said, "It's beautiful here. It's just, you can't explain the beauty. You can't put it in words. I don't care who you are. You cannot put it in words." The sky was just, it's bluer than any blue that you'd ever seen down here. The trees, the leaves and everything, there's a beautiful wind blowing all the time. Flute music, and I never understood that, but now I do now, because Krishna, God, the Hindi name for God, he always played a flute. And you can hear the flute music and everything. And I looked at my dad, I told him, I said, "I don't want to go back. I love it here. I want to stay." he looked at me, he said, son, I love you. He said, but you can't stay here. He said, it's not your time to go yet. You have to go back. You have a job to do on earth. You have work to do yet. He said, but I'll be waiting for you. And, that's pretty much when I woke up there. I like I said, I thought it was a dream. And then when he told me that, I thought, well, maybe it wasn't a dream. Maybe it was real. I did, I mean, my daughter and my dad both been dead since 2006. I'd never had dreams about them, never seen them in visions or anything. And this just popped up as clear as a bell. We don't talk in heaven like we do here. It's just telepathically. And I mean, it's just, once you have an NDE, you never forget it because it just changes your life dramatically. I mean, I have more empathy. Used to be, I didn't care if somebody died or not, or what. I mean, I was on antidepressant, depression magazine, antidepressant, anxiety meds, heart meds, lung meds, high blood pressure, cholesterol, and it made me into a zombie where I I really didn't care about anybody. But after this experience, I'm like, there had to be something better. Better than taking 50 pills a day. Better than being in the hospital 3 and 4 times a week or at the doctor's and everything. And don't anybody do this at home. But I literally weaned myself off of medications myself and started taking herbs and vitamins, using essential oils, changed the diet and everything. We're now vegetarians. Don't do it without consulting a physician. Promise me you don't do it. I'm not recommending anybody do something stupid like that. But it was an experience I remember till the day I die. My daughter looked just as beautiful with a smile. And she had the shirt on that she had buried in, said, I'm a little angel. Yeah. And that's what she was buried in. And, we didn't talk much, but just be able to see her, and she's not in the wheelchair. She's up and running around, jumping and playing. Something she never did on earth. And I mean, I still miss her dearly, but I'm glad she's better. I know she's in a better place. She's not in pain. No more surgery, no more sickness. And that's also the reason I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to leave my daughter and my dad. But the beauty of it, and just to feel the love from the light and everything, it's just. Lady wrote a book years ago. I can't remember her name, but it's Embraced by the Light.
Peggy.
Yeah, and I read the book, and at first I thought, she's kind of strange, near-death experience. People didn't talk about it then. But, it says she was embraced by light, and I thought, God embraced her, God embraced her. Well, God was the light. God did embrace her because he embraced her with the light. And God is the light that you see there. And a lot of things in her book that I read, I thought was totally crazy. And, she had lost a marble or two. And now, since the near-death experience, I got up one morning and told my wife, I said, let's go see the Krishna Temple of Gold, Palace of Gold up there. Well, we went up there and met several people, took a tour of the palace and everything, went through the temple and talked to several people. And we got home that night, and I'm thinking, man, them people are crazy. They're weird. Yeah, they're really strange people up there. And I sit there, man, I'm thinking, I fit in right there. And we've been going back, devotees now. It's changed my life, because now, even with the near-death experience beforehand, I was closed-minded about it. The only religion I would believe is what was in the Christian Bible. And if you didn't believe what was in the Christian Bible, you're going to hell. That's the way I was brought up. Well, if you do this, you're going to hell. You're doing that, you're going to hell. You do that, you're going to hell. I was scared. I was afraid to get out of bed in the morning. I was afraid if I looked at something I wasn't supposed to, I see something I'm not supposed to see or hear something, I'm going to go to hell. And no, I'm not like that, because you can't block yourself off from everything. You